Rachel Nichols, still hanging with Richard Jefferson, Kendrick Perkins. Gentlemen, I want to talk about Kawhi Leonard. He has missed the last 5 games due to what the Clippers are calling a right knee sprain. We have not gotten any more information than that. Now, there has been reports out there of, is it actually torn? The Clippers, both on and off the record, frankly, have denied that to me. They say, no, it is a sprain. Obviously, at this time of year, injury conversations, they're always a little bit murky. But Ty Lue has just come out and said, I am preparing as if he cannot play this series. And hey, if he's able to come back, it'll be a nice surprise whenever that is. How worried should Clippers fans be that we just won't see him the rest of these playoffs, Perk?
Very worried. I don't think he comes back. I mean, anything dealing with the knee and the strained ACL, anything around there, for me tearing my ACL, it's just something that you just can't play with. And if I'm Kawhi, I'm going to sit out because coming back, you're not going to be at full strength anyway. And you have a chance of possibly hurting yourself even more going into the summertime when you could just sit this one out, get ready for the summertime, get better in the summertime, get healthier, and then come back later.
Yeah, and again, you shouldn't be worried about something you can't control, and that's what T. Lue is looking at. The best way to approach this, and this is why sometimes when you're injured, it is very disconnected. You feel so disconnected from your teammates because they have to move on. They have to leave the injured and the wounded behind, and they have to move on. And that's really what it is. It's like, we can't sit and talk about, is Kawhi going to be come back? Every player on the Clipper team should act like Kawhi is not coming back. Everybody in the coaching staff, and even fans.
I think what they're doing.
That's what it is. It's just like, we don't need updates until Kawhi goes to probable or an improve. And until we hear that, we should no longer think about him and just hope that he can get healthy as quickly as possible. And maybe that day will come sooner than later.
And by the way, NBA players don't go from not practicing with the team at all to playing the next day.
No.
So we would know if he was doing on-court work with the team, if he was in 5-on-5s in practice.
If a guy is up in the suite with his kids, that is not something you typically see, because normally you should be down there with your teammates.
I do want to make a point about that, is that he goes down to the locker room at halftime, and he did that again last night. He did that for the previous home games. He's with the team when he feels like he can talk to them. He personally is not a sit on the bench guy when he is hurt, and has not been, and he's done it a few times. I'm not saying he's never done it, but typically when he is hurt, he will either sit in the locker room or he will sit up there and then come down to the locker room during halftime.
I understand that. I'm just saying, if there's an opportunity, Serge Ibaka, I see out there on the floor.
Yeah.
If you're there and you can see something and point out something, he has a vast basketball knowledge that you give. I'm not criticizing him for it, but I'm just saying that indicates to me that he's a little bit further away from them being connected to the team. He's almost separated himself.
Well, again, I don't want to get into the mental.
Right.
Every player is different.
No, I'm talking about the injury. That means he's.
I know, but he's not pretending that, there are guys like Chris Paul, when we saw him taken out of the game at times for his shoulder. Trust me, Chris Paul wants to be on the bench. He is talking the whole time. He is yelling things out. He wants Campaign to be doing this. He wants this. He's talking in the huddle. Kawhi is not that guy, even when he's playing.
Right.
We know that, right? Well, so it is okay to be a different personality.
I agree.
It is okay to do your talking in private, and that is what he has been doing. I want to be a little careful about, everybody's got to act exactly the same.
Yeah, I wasn't criticizing him for being up there.
And it means that, he doesn't like the team or he's separated himself.
No.
I thought with that whole thing with LeBron a couple seasons ago where, he's sitting 4 seats away on the bench. It must mean X. It's just, that stuff feels very silly to me.
And then how can you not notice Serge Ibaka, right, wearing a curtain in the throw room?
I think Serge Ibaka looks fantastic. Thank you very much.
Don't do that.
And Serge Ibaka.
I do.
Think that.
Me and Serge Ibaka think that.
You and Serge Ibaka.
I'm all for personal
I'm
style.
just kidding, Serge.
He doesn't do fashion. He does art, he says.
Yeah.
There you go. We touched on this a bit yesterday, but I do want to dig into Ben Simmons and the Sixers. He was not the player the Sixers needed him to be against the Hawks. I'm just going to put it that way. And Woj reported yesterday Ben's agent, Rich Paul, engaged Philadelphia on whether it makes sense to find a trade before the start of the season. Now, Woj was very clear. He did not request a trade. It was just a conversation of, hey, we all have this player's interest in mind. What should we be talking about right now? Simmons is owed $147 million over the next 4 years. Richard, Daryl Morey has come out and said, we are keeping Ben Simmons. Do you think that makes sense for them? Or do you think a change of scenery would be good? Maybe not even for the Sixers, but Ben Simmons.
Well, I think sometimes you can see a GM doing that to make it so it's not a fire sale.
Yes,
if
of
everyone's
course.
we're moving on.
Well,
and
no, I mean, yes, that's what Daryl should say.
Daryl should say that. So let's people say, well, Daryl Morey didn't said he was like, look, you do that to kind of stop the market from crashing on the players. Like, no, we love them, we want to grow from them. I think it's time for them to move on. From my sense is that if you can't handle that pressure in the second round, if you're in that moment, but you have Joel Embiid, who's an MVP caliber player, and you're trying to win championships, so you have to make evaluations every single day. Is this player going to help us get closer or further away from a championship? Not 50 wins, not division titles, no, like a championship. And I think that's where Ben Simmons, if he's not going to improve, this is not a Philadelphia 76er or like Ben Simmons problems. This is just a Ben Simmons problem, and they need to move on.
Well, I don't think it's about him improving, because I don't think he's a guy that's going to be able to knock down jump shots consistently or even knock down jump shots, period. He is a guy that's just out of position. He is a power forward. He's a center type player. And him and Joel Embiid is just in each other's way. If you go back and look at the games when Joel Embiid didn't play, Ben Simmons went off. He even dropped 40 on Utah. In Utah, and Joel was not there. I mean, he had multiple 20-plus games. I think it's time for him to move on. I think they should move him on to a situation where he could be used like a Sabonis, a guy that could initiate the offense, dribble a handoff, roll to the basket, has a big that loves to float around the three-point line like Miles Turner, Karl Anthony Towns, and then have him playing in the paint. It just came to the conclusion that they don't fit. They don't fit.
Okay, but here's where I think you got to make the distinction. First of all, just saying trade someone to trade someone, I don't think it's an untenable situation, especially in the regular season. In the regular season, it worked, right? We all were like, oh, they got the number 1 seed. Ben had Defensive Player of the Year consideration. You can't pretend that this wasn't a good regular season for the Sixers. And by the way, the partnership between them, yes, they occupy much of the same space, but you put enough shooters around them. We have seen that work in multiple stretches of when Ben has been with the Sixers. That being said, if there is a guy available soon, and you can make a deal that's good, like, say, when James Harden suddenly decides he wants to be traded from Houston, I have been very vocal. I would have tried everything I could to make that deal because Ben Simmons' value was high then, and you would also be trying to keep James Harden away from Brooklyn, which, if you play in the Eastern Conference, very important. That being said, right now, his value is much lower. And after this performance, I don't think they will ever get value for him. So I would say build him back up during the regular season, build his trade value back up, and maybe trade him at the deadline. Yeah,
but Rachel, here's the problem. When him and Joel is on the floor together in the regular season, I watched this throughout the course of this season. He loses his confidence. Why? Because he's not getting touches. So go look. He was still averaging 5 points and 9 points and 8 points throughout the regular season because they were going through Seth Curry, Joel Embiid, and Tobias Harris. That's why Ben Simmons locked in on the defensive end. And then when time came in the playoffs for him to contribute, he couldn't even make a layup because he didn't develop that confidence throughout the regular season.
Well, yes, I do think one of the main things they have to work on this summer to either make him better for their team or to get his trade value up, either one, is he cannot be scared of contact going in the fourth quarter to hit foul shots. Because if that one thing was fixed, if he could hit free throws and wasn't scared to be put in the position of hitting free throws.
Okay, but really quickly.
They would have won some of those games.
Yes. How many years have we been talking about that for Ben Simmons?
I agree.
So now, if a guy's been in the league 5 years now, 6 years, and we've been talking about it for the last 3 or 4.
You think it's just never going to happen?
I'm not going to say it's never going to happen, but we can't assume that us sitting up here saying they need to build up his confidence or he needs to improve his shot. He's been hearing that for 3 years. And for 3 years, we end up saying the same thing. So...
Yeah, but RJ, we've been saying the same thing about his shooting. We never said anything about him finishing around the basket.
Well, he's not.
He struggled with finishing around the basket.
But that was a fear of free throws, don't you think?
Yeah.
Yes. He didn't. You don't. He's so big and strong. Like, that's the one thing about Giannis or even guys like Shaq that are high-level players. They don't care. Give me 25 free throws. I'll make 13 of them, but I'm going to get my 25.
Right. Well, we will circle back on Giannis free throws in just 2 minutes. Coming up, we're going to talk about Jason Kidd being tabbed as the newest head coach of the Dallas Mavericks. They've also hired longtime Nike exec Nico Harrison, which, yay, Nico. GM, run their basketball operations. He's fantastic. We'll discuss that soon. Are they headed in the right direction? That and